My name is Brenda Miller, and I'm 31 years old. 3 days ago, I woke up on my birthday morning to the acrid smell of burned plastic and a devastating truth. My primary credit card was melted into a twisted lump in my kitchen trash, and $25,000 had vanished from my savings account. Not transferred. Not pending. Gone. The security footage from the night before had been deliberately deleted. Only 3 people knew that access code. Me, my father Robert, and my stepmother Linda, who'd insisted she needed it for emergencies. Within an hour, my phone lit up with messages from my half-sister Melissa, selfies from Paris, champagne in hand, designer bags at her feet. "Thanks for making this trip possible, sis," she wrote. "Some of us actually know how to live instead of hoarding money like a scared little mouse." Then Linda called, her voice dripping with false sweetness, reminding me about the elaborate party she'd planned for that night at the Grand Meridian, a guest list packed with my dad's business partners and the country club elite. "Wear something appropriate," she purred. "I'm sure you'll figure something out. You're so good at making do with less." They didn't just want my money. They wanted me humiliated in front of our entire professional world. The quiet daughter who never fought back, finally broken and exposed as weak. What they didn't know is that sometimes the quietest person in the room holds all the cards, waiting for the perfect moment to play them. If you're watching this, please subscribe and tell me where you're from, because that night, in a ballroom sparkling with crystal and filled with sharks in suits, my father finally broke 10 years of silence, and over 100 witnesses heard my family confess their crimes before learning exactly who owned everything that mattered. The acrid smell of melted plastic led me to my kitchen trash, where I found my credit card twisted into an unrecognizable sculpture, still warm to the touch. My hands shook as I opened my banking app, watching my carefully built savings account display a devastating zero balance. 3 years of relentless overtime, skipped vacations, and countless sacrifices, all evaporated overnight while I slept in my own bed, trusting my family. The transaction history told a chilling story before it could be wiped. Multiple ATM withdrawals at maximum daily limits, wire transfers to unknown accounts, luxury purchases from Tiffany's, Nordstrom, and Saks Fifth Avenue, all processed between midnight and 6 a.m. by someone with intimate knowledge of my financial life. This wasn't random theft. It was calculated psychological warfare, timed perfectly for my birthday morning, hours before Linda's elaborate party at the Grand Meridian. I rushed to check the home security app, but the footage from last night had been professionally deleted. Someone with the access code had covered their tracks meticulously. The implications hit me like ice water. Only 3 people knew that code, and Linda had insisted on having it for family emergencies. Apparently, funding my stepsister's European shopping spree qualified as one. Melissa's texts arrived like daggers. The first photo showed her at the Eiffel Tower, designer sunglasses reflecting the morning light, champagne flute raised in mock celebration. "Morning, sis. Paris is amazing. Thanks for making this trip possible. Some of us know how to actually live life, instead of hoarding money like a scared little mouse." The next image displayed shopping bags from Louis Vuitton, Hermes, and Dior. "Don't worry, I'll bring you back a keychain or something cute." "That's more your speed, right?" Linda's call came next, her voice a masterclass in false concern. "Brenda, darling, just calling to remind you about tonight, 8 sharp at the Grand Meridian. Everyone will be there. Your father's business partners, the extended family, even the Hartmans from the country club." When I tried to mention my stolen money, she smoothly deflected. "Oh, and do wear something appropriate. I know you prefer those modest little outfits, but this is a real celebration. Maybe buy something nice. Oh, wait." Her pause was perfectly timed, savoring my financial helplessness. "Well, I'm sure you'll figure something out. You're so good at making do with less." The conversation continued with surgical precision. Life teaches us lessons when we need them most, sweetheart. Some people are too weak to protect what's theirs. They make themselves victims by being passive little doormats. But tonight isn't about your problems. It's about family. She hung up before I could respond, leaving me staring at my phone in disbelief. Another text from Melissa followed. Mom says you might be upset about something. Don't be such a baby, Bren. It's your birthday. Though I guess at 32, still single, still living in that tiny apartment, still letting everyone walk all over you. Maybe it's more of a pity party than a birthday party. As I sat in my empty kitchen, surrounded by the evidence of their betrayal, something shifted inside me. They believed they were teaching me a lesson about weakness, expecting me to arrive tonight broken and humiliated. But as I opened my laptop and began documenting everything, screenshots, transaction records, deleted security logs, I realized they had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. I texted the one person who could help me turn the tables. James, it's Brenda Miller. That situation we discussed, it's happening tonight. His instant reply gave me hope. Understood. Everything is ready. See you at 8. I had 5 hours to prepare, and they had no idea what was coming. The roots of this elaborate betrayal stretched back 10 years, to the day Linda married my father and systematically began redefining our family dynamics. She arrived with her daughter Melissa and immediately established a new hierarchy, introducing Melissa as the daughter who inherited the Miller strength, while positioning me as the compliant, sacrificial one who understood family loyalty. My quiet nature, my empathy, my desire for harmony, all were weaponized against me and reframed as character flaws. Every family gathering became a stage for Melissa's entitled performances. She would demand outrageous things, a brand new BMW at 16, an extravagant gap year in Europe, startup capital for her perpetually failing business ventures. Dad would hesitate, clearly uncomfortable, and Linda would smoothly intervene with her practiced manipulation. Brenda understands family sacrifice, don't you, sweetheart? She's not selfish like some people. And every single time I caved, mistaking my compliance for kindness and their exploitation for family love. When Melissa inevitably crashed her third car, I co-signed for the fourth because family helps family. When Linda needed $10,000 for a charity gala that mysteriously never materialized, I wrote the check without question, afraid that refusing would brand me as unsupportive. My own milestones were consistently forgotten. 3 consecutive birthdays passed without acknowledgement from Linda or Melissa, while their elaborate celebrations for Melissa were meticulously planned and lavishly funded, often with my contributions. The psychological warfare was relentless and sophisticated. Melissa knows what she wants and takes it. That's real strength, Linda would announce at dinner parties, often adding with false sympathy, poor Brenda, always waiting for permission to live her own life. They deliberately mistook my restraint for weakness, my kindness for stupidity, my strategic patience for passive acceptance. The comparisons were constant. Melissa's killer instinct versus my overthinking, her natural leadership versus my emotional instability. While they performed their power plays, I was quietly building something far more substantial. I excelled academically, built my career methodically, saved every penny, and learned every aspect of Miller Industries from the ground up. While Melissa threw tantrums to get her way, I was mastering corporate finance. While Linda spent Dad's money on status symbols, I was developing the expertise that would one day run the company. The irony was profound. They were so consumed with labeling me as weak that they never noticed Dad pulling me aside for private conversations about the company's future, discussions that never included Linda or Melissa. 6 months ago, everything escalated when Dad promoted me to chief accountant. Linda's reaction was immediate and vicious. "Robert," She doesn't have the backbone for leadership. Melissa should be groomed for executive roles. She has that killer instinct Brenda lacks. The professional sabotage began immediately. Family business meetings scheduled when I was traveling. Investment decisions made without consulting the chief accountant. Melissa using company credit cards for personal expenses while bypassing my department entirely. The final insult came at last month's board meeting, where Linda actually presented a proposal to restructure the finance department to reduce Brenda's stress levels, recommending Melissa as co-CFO, despite her complete lack of financial experience. It was audacious, insulting, and ultimately revealing of their true intentions. But during this escalation, I noticed something crucial. Dad had started meeting privately with James Chen, our family lawyer, every Thursday. When I asked about these meetings, his response was cryptic. "Patience, Brenda. Sometimes the best strategy is letting people reveal their true nature." At the time, I thought it was another of his enigmatic business philosophies. Now, staring at my emptied accounts, I was beginning to understand that his silence wasn't indifference. It was strategy. He wasn't letting them destroy me. He was letting them expose themselves completely. Standing outside the Grand Meridian at 7:45 p.m., I calculated the true cost of their betrayal. The $25,000 represented more than money. It was 1,100 hours of overtime, 36 months of skipped vacations, and countless personal sacrifices. My credit score would plummet from 780 to below 600, destroying the mortgage pre-approval I'd worked 5 years to achieve. As chief accountant, this personal financial disaster could obliterate my professional reputation. How could I manage millions in company assets if I couldn't protect my own accounts? Through the restaurant's floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the carefully curated guest list. Dad's business partners, potential investors, board members, country club elite, everyone who mattered in our professional and social circles. Linda had orchestrated this perfectly, ensuring maximum witnesses for what she believed would be my complete public humiliation. The maitre d' handed me a small envelope containing a note in Dad's handwriting. "Trust the process. R." I tucked it into my purse alongside my meticulously gathered evidence. The celestial ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and $100 place settings. Over 100 guests mingled with champagne, creating the perfect backdrop for Linda's production. "Brenda!" Harrison Walsh, our biggest client, approached with genuine warmth. "Your father speaks so highly of your work. That restructuring proposal you presented saved us over $2 million last quarter." Before I could respond, Linda materialized between us like silk wrapped around steel. "Yes, Brenda tries so hard, doesn't she?" Linda's voice carried just enough volume to be overheard. "Of course, Melissa has that natural business instinct. She doesn't need to overthink everything like some people." Mrs. Walsh looked uncomfortable at the obvious slight, and Harrison's expression darkened. The pattern I'd endured for years was now playing out in front of our most important clients, Linda systematically undermining my professional reputation. Across the room, I spotted James Chen near the bar, his briefcase positioned strategically at his feet. When our eyes met, he raised his glass slightly, a signal that everything was in place. The guest list wasn't just social. These were witnesses to whatever was about to unfold. My assigned seat was at the secondary family table, while Melissa occupied the place of honor beside Dad. The symbolism was deliberate. The forgotten daughter, relegated to the sidelines while the golden child basked in the spotlight. "Ladies and gentlemen," Linda's voice rang out, "please take your seats for a very special toast." The stakes couldn't be higher. Staying silent would confirm their narrative of my weakness, branding me forever as the victim who let her family rob her blind. But causing a scene could destroy the business relationships Dad had spent decades building, especially with our competitors circling like sharks, ready to exploit any family drama. James Chen's place card read, "Legal Counsel, Executor," and he leaned over to whisper, Your father wants you to know he's proud of your restraint. But restraint and surrender aren't the same thing. The briefcase beside him contained documents that would change everything, though Linda kept glancing nervously in our direction, clearly sensing something was wrong but unable to identify the threat. Melissa intercepted me before I could settle in. Her diamond earrings, which I recognized from my Tiffany's statement, catching the light. "Welcome to your party, sister. Hope you can afford the memories," she whispered with practiced cruelty. Linda glided over in a $3,000 gown charged to the company card, adding her own barbs about my little finance role and Melissa's international business connections. The room felt like a theater where I was the only one who hadn't received the full script. The ambiance was perfect for Linda's performance. Soft jazz, golden lighting, enough space between tables for dramatic revelations. But the air crackled with unspoken tension, and I could sense that Dad's traditional birthday toast would be anything but traditional. Dad rose slowly, his movement commanding instant attention throughout the ballroom. But before he could speak, Melissa, emboldened by champagne and arrogance, grabbed the microphone from the DJ stand. "Sorry, Daddy, but I just have to share." Her voice echoed through the sound system as she connected her phone to the display screen. Paris was absolutely transformative. The shopping alone was incredible. The screen filled with photo after photo. Melissa at the Louvre, shopping on the Champs-Élysées, dining at Michelin-starred restaurants. Each image was more extravagant than the last, a monument to excess funded by my stolen savings. Linda stood to join the performance, declaring, "Strong women seize opportunities, unlike some people who hoard every penny, afraid of actually living." Melissa's eyes found mine across the room. That's what real family support looks like. $25,000 invested in international connections while some people sit on their savings like Scrooge. The room erupted in shocked whispers. Board members gasped, Harrison Walsh's wife covered her mouth, and several guests pulled out phones to discreetly record the unfolding drama. "You took her money?" someone called out from the crowd. "We redistributed it," Linda corrected with a razor-sharp smile, her voice carrying across the now silent ballroom. "Brenda's too weak to use it properly, always saving, never living. Someone had to teach her that money is meant to be spent." Melissa, drunk on attention and malice, actually pulled up her banking app to show nearby guests. "Look, I'm not hiding anything. Yes, I used Brenda's cards. Yes, I transferred her savings. She's the family ATM. It's what she's good at." The confession was complete, recorded on multiple phones, witnessed by over 100 people. That's when I stood, my voice cutting through the chaos with calm precision. "So you admit, in front of everyone here, that you stole $25,000 from my accounts?" The room fell dead silent. "Stole?" Linda laughed, but her eyes betrayed growing unease. "We taught you a lesson about family." "A lesson?" I repeated, turning to James. "Did you get that?" "Every word, Ms. Miller," he confirmed, his phone discreetly recording their confession. Dad stepped forward, his expression no longer neutral but cold and corporate, the face that had built an empire and crushed competitors. "Now," he said, his voice carrying absolute authority, "let me tell you what lesson you actually taught." Linda tried to maintain control. "Brenda needs to learn strength. Look at her, 32, single, no backbone. She'll thank us one day." "Strength isn't always loud," I replied, my voice amplified by the still active microphone. Harrison Walsh stood up, his face etched with professional fury. "Mrs. Miller, are you seriously admitting to theft at a public event?" Linda's response was a fatal error. "It's not theft. When it's family teaching family something, you'd understand if you knew how real families operate." The insult to our biggest client sealed her fate. Enough. Dad's single word cut through everything like a blade. 6 months ago, I discovered systematic theft from Miller Industries. company cards used for personal expenses, fraudulent invoices, embezzlement totaling over $300,000. Linda's face went white. "Robert, you can't." I have. "And I will," he interrupted, nodding to James. "Mr. Chen, please present the documentation." James opened his thick portfolio, revealing legal papers that would change everything. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you're about to witness is the legal transfer of complete operational authority of Miller Industries to its rightful guardian." The quiet daughter was about to inherit the empire, and everyone in that ballroom would witness the moment Linda and Melissa learned they'd been stealing from their own sister's company. James Chen stood with professional gravity, pulling out the first document from his portfolio. "This is a power of attorney executed 6 months ago, granting Brenda Miller complete authority over all Miller Industries' financial decisions." The legal papers rustled in the stunned silence as he continued. "This is the board resolution, unanimously approved, appointing Brenda Miller as Chief Financial Officer with full executive powers, effective immediately upon any breach of fiduciary duty by current family members." Linda stumbled backward, her face ashen. "That's not possible. I would have known." "You were too busy stealing to notice," James replied with clinical precision. He held up a third document. "This is the criminal complaint we're prepared to file Monday morning, if full restitution isn't made within 48 hours. The room was absolutely silent, even the waitstaff frozen by the magnitude of what they were witnessing. "Every transaction over $1,000, James announced to the captivated audience, has required Brenda's signature for the past 6 months. Every purchase you made, Linda, every transfer, every withdrawal, all unauthorized, all criminal." Melissa's phone clattered to the floor as the implications hit her. "But I'm family," she stammered desperately. "So is Brenda," Dad said coldly. "Yet that didn't stop you from robbing her." James pulled out his tablet, displaying bank statements for all to see. "As of this moment, all accounts linked to Linda and Melissa Miller have been frozen pending investigation. The forensic audit is already underway, revealing embezzlement totaling nearly $400,000 over 3 years." "You can't do this," Linda shrieked, her composure completely shattered. "I'm your wife!" "And you've been embezzling from our company for 3 years, Dad replied with devastating calm. "The prenuptial agreement you signed specifically states that any criminal activity voids all financial claims." The legal trap had been perfectly constructed, every contingency anticipated. Harrison Walsh rose slowly, his voice carrying across the ballroom. "Robert, Brenda, on behalf of Walsh Enterprises, I want to state publicly that we have complete confidence in your leadership and integrity. In fact, we'd like to increase our contract by 40%, effective immediately." Other business partners began standing one by one, declaring their support and proposing new deals. The tide hadn't just turned, it had become a tsunami of professional endorsement. I stood, my voice steady and clear. "You have 48 hours to return the $25,000 you stole from my personal accounts. This is non-negotiable." Linda tried to approach me, but James stepped between us. "Mrs. Miller, I'd advise against any contact that could be construed as intimidation." I continued with professional precision. "Additionally, it's now 8:47 p.m. on Saturday. You have until 8:47 p.m. Monday to provide a full accounting of all company funds you've misappropriated. Any discrepancy will be considered additional fraud." "We can't possibly," Linda protested. "Then I suggest you start immediately," I replied in the calm tone I used for board meetings. "Your corporate credit cards were canceled as of noon today. Your key cards to Miller Industries offices have been deactivated. Your company vehicles need to be returned by Monday morning." "My car?" Melissa gasped. "The company's car," I corrected, "which you've been using for personal purposes in violation of policy." Linda fell to her knees, actually grabbing my dress in desperation. "Brenda, please. We're family. You can't do this. I gently removed her hands with quiet dignity. My kindness was never weakness, Linda. Your cruelty was. Dad moved to stand beside me, his hand briefly touching my shoulder in support. I believe this party is over, he announced to the room. As Linda and Melissa stumbled toward the exit, the ballroom erupted, not in chaos, but in sustained applause. The quiet daughter had finally found her voice, and it spoke with the authority of an empire. The applause that followed wasn't just for a birthday. It was for justice served with precision and grace. Within minutes, I was surrounded by board members and business partners, each expressing support and proposing new contracts. 3 major deals were verbally agreed upon before the appetizers were cleared. My phone buzzed with messages from my accounting team. Standing behind you 100%, and about damn time. 6 weeks later, I sat in my new corner office as CEO of Miller Industries, looking out over the city skyline. The restitution arrived 4 minutes before the deadline, every penny of the $25,000 plus interest and fees. Melissa sold her Mercedes, her designer wardrobe, and the jewelry bought with my money. Linda liquidated her secret investment account and signed divorce papers within 2 weeks. Under my leadership, the company grew 40% in the first quarter. Dad and I grew closer than we'd ever been. Your mother always said you had her quiet strength, he told me, the kind that moves mountains when nobody's watching. My credit score recovered, and I bought my dream house last week, with cash. Looking back, I learned that boundaries aren't walls. They're bridges to respect. My silence was never weakness. It was strategic patience, gathering evidence while they revealed their true nature. I didn't push them off the cliff. I simply stopped being their safety net. If you've ever been underestimated by people who should have protected you, remember, your patience isn't weakness. It's power waiting for the perfect moment. What boundaries do you need to set? Share your thoughts below, subscribe, and remember, the quiet ones often hold the most power.